Commander Henry Walsh stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, his eyes fixed on the main screen. 5 human ships, the pride of Earth's fleet, floated in the dark space. They seemed very small against the blackness of space, but they were not alone. 30 massive alien ships had appeared near Jupiter's orbit 3 days ago. They were huge, each one at least 5 times bigger than Earth's largest vessel. Their dark hulls gleamed with strange lights, and their shapes reminded Henry of giant insects. "The Coroxian delegation is requesting to board, sir," said Officer Susan Baker. Her voice was calm, but Henry could see the worry in her eyes. "Tell them we're ready," Henry replied. Admiral Patricia Morgan stood beside him. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. "Remember," she said quietly, "show no fear." The transport bay doors opened with a soft hiss. 6 tall figures walked onto the Defender. The aliens were nearly 8 feet tall with hard, shiny skin that looked like armor. Their heads had large eyes and moving parts that clicked as they spoke. They moved with quick, jerky steps. The tallest one stepped forward. A small device on its chest glowed, and a flat voice came out. "I am High Commander Vexthor of the Coroxian Empire," the translation device said. "We control 12 star systems and have come to assess your world." Patricia stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Admiral Morgan of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." The alien's head tilted, and its eyes blinked in a strange pattern. The translator device made a sound like laughter. "This is your defense fleet, 5 small ships." Vexthor's arm swept toward the window. "Our smallest scout vessel has more firepower than your entire group." Henry felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression neutral. Earth's ships were indeed small compared to the alien vessels. The Defender, their flagship, was only 300 meters long. The smallest Coroxian ship looked to be at least 1,500 meters. "We are a peaceful people," Patricia said. "Our fleet reflects our priorities." Another alien stepped forward. This one had markings on its armor that shimmered with blue light. "I am Science Officer Jeltar," it said through the translator. "Our scans show your planet has many valuable resources. Your technology level is adequate. You have achieved limited space travel, but little else of value." Henry noticed how the aliens seemed to look down at them, not just because they were taller, but with real feeling. They thought humans were weak, simple, not worth respect. "We would be happy to show you more about our culture," Patricia offered. "Perhaps you would join us for a meeting with our leaders." The aliens spoke among themselves in clicking sounds. Finally, Vexthor turned back. "We will meet your leaders. Then we will decide if your species deserves to join our empire as servants, or if your resources should be taken by force." After the aliens left the room, Henry let out a long breath. "They think we're nothing," he whispered to Patricia. "Did you see how they looked at us? Like we're insects." Patricia nodded slowly. "Let them think that. For now." Back in her private office, Patricia pressed her hand against a hidden scanner. A secret panel opened in the wall, revealing a communication system unlike anything on the main bridge. It used technology the Coroxians couldn't detect. "This is Morgan." The visitors took the bait. "They see only what we want them to see." A voice answered from the secure line. "Good. Continue with Operation Trojan Horse. Let them underestimate us." Patricia looked out her small window at the massive alien ships. They thought humanity was weak because of their tiny fleet. They had no idea what was really waiting for them. "Their arrogance will be their downfall," she said softly. Outside in space, the 5 human ships looked small and vulnerable next to the giant alien vessels. But deep inside Earth, beneath the oceans, and hidden throughout the solar system, humanity's real power waited, invisible, deadly, and ready. The aliens had laughed at humanity's tiny fleet. Soon, they would learn their mistake. The Coroxian leaders gathered in a large room inside their biggest ship. The walls were covered with moving pictures showing Earth, its cities, and its small fleet of spaceships. General Vexthor stood tall, his hard shell shining under the bright lights. "Look at this primitive world," he said, pointing to the images. "Their biggest cities would fit inside our smallest colonies." Military advisor Krasna clicked her jaw parts together. She was smaller than Vexthor, but had more kill marks on her armor. "Their weapons are simple," she said. "Their ships use basic fuel rockets and weak energy shields. We detected only 200 ships in their entire system." Science officer Jeltar moved closer to the images, his head tilted to one side. "Yet they have survived for thousands of years. They must have some strengths we don't see." Vexthor made a sharp sound that was like laughter. "What strength?" "Their planet has almost no defenses in space. They waste resources on comfort instead of war." The room darkened as a new figure appeared in the center. Not really there, but a picture sent from far away. Emperor Kazvex was even larger than Vexthor, with red markings across his shell and gold pieces on his arms. "What have you found, General?" the Emperor asked. Vexthor bowed low. "A weak species, my Emperor. They have resources we want: water, metals, and biological materials. Taking their world would be easy." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "And the risk?" "None." "Great one," said Krasna quickly. "Their ships are toys compared to ours. We could crush them in one day." Jeltar made a small noise, and the Emperor looked at him. "You disagree, science officer?" "I am curious, Emperor," Jeltar said carefully. "Humans have a strange history. They fight among themselves, often, but unite against outside threats. Their technology grows very fast." The Emperor considered this. "Test them, then. Show them our power. If they submit, we take what we want peacefully. If not," his mouth parts clicked together, "we make them an example for other worlds." Back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Morgan sat at a long table with 20 other people. President Alan Novak, a tall man with dark skin and graying hair, stood at the front of the room. "What do they want?" the president asked. Patricia touched a screen, and pictures of the alien ships appeared on the wall. "They want our resources, and they think we're weak." "Did their scans detect our real defenses?" asked Defense Secretary William Carter. He was older than the others, with many scars on his hands. Patricia smiled slightly. "No, the quantum shields worked perfectly. They see only our decoy fleet and basic defenses." The president nodded. "Good. Operation Trojan Horse continues as planned." In a room deep under the surface of the moon, Lieutenant Commander Diane Foster watched hundreds of small dots moving on a big screen. Each dot was a tiny machine smaller than a dust particle. Billions of these machines had been released near the alien ships when they first arrived. "Nanoswarm is at 42% coverage," she reported over a secure line. "The aliens have no idea they're being surrounded." Meanwhile, on the Karaxian flagship, Vexthor prepared a message to Earth. His staff had created images of Karaxian warriors destroying human cities, of alien ships burning Earth's surface. "These should frighten them properly," he said with satisfaction. "Soon, they will beg to surrender." Jeltar watched quietly from the corner. Something bothered him about these humans. They seemed too calm for a species facing destruction. Either they were very stupid, or they knew something the Karaxians did not. "Perhaps we should scan again with different methods," he suggested. Vexthor made that sharp laughing sound again. "Why waste time? Their tiny fleet tells us everything we need to know." As night fell over Earth, lights went out in cities as people looked up at the sky with worry. But deep underground, in secret bases on the Moon, Mars, and beyond, humanity's real forces were waking up. The Karaxians had seen Earth's tiny fleet and thought they knew humanity's strength. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 2 weeks passed. Earth's people went about their daily lives, but everyone felt the tension. The 5 human ships stayed in position, watching the Karaxian vessels. Then, early one morning, space seemed to tear open. Hundreds of new alien ships poured through, big and small, all armed with weapons. Not just 5 or 30 ships now, but 300 massive war vessels surrounded Earth. On screens across the planet, in homes and public places, a face appeared. Emperor Kazvex looked down at humanity with his large, cold eyes. "People of Earth," the alien ruler said, his voice translated into all human languages. "Your world has things we need. Your water, metals, and biological materials will serve the Coroxian Empire." People in cities around the world stopped to watch, their faces pale with fear. "You have 2 choices," the Emperor continued. "Become our servants and live, or resist and be destroyed. Your tiny fleet cannot protect you." In the White House, President Alan Novak watched the message with his advisors. Unlike the scared people in the streets, he remained calm. "They've positioned their fleet poorly," noted General Andrew Harrison, pointing to a 3D map of Earth orbit. "They're trying to look impressive, not fight effectively." The president nodded. "They expect us to surrender immediately. How long will it take to fully activate our defenses?" Defense Secretary William Carter checked his tablet. "We need 48 hours for Project Achilles to reach full power. Then we'll ask for time," the president decided. He straightened his tie and stepped in front of the camera. His message was brief. "This is President Novak of Earth. We request 48 hours to prepare our planet for your arrival and to organize our surrender protocols." On the Coroxian flagship, General Vexthor watched Earth's reply with satisfaction. "See how quickly they bend," he said to his officers. "They know they cannot fight us." Science officer Jeltar studied the screens showing Earth's small fleet. "Something is strange. Their ships are moving away from each other. That is not normal surrender behavior." Vexthor waved his concern away. "They are primitive. They don't even know how to surrender properly." The Emperor's image appeared again. "We will grant them 48 hours. It will give them time to understand their hopeless situation." Deep below the ocean floor, in a base hidden from all normal scans, Captain Frank Byers watched hundreds of technicians prepare Earth's real fleet. The ships here were smaller than the decoys in orbit, but far more advanced. "Quantum drives at 89% power," reported Chief Engineer Lisa Kelly. Her fingers moved quickly over glowing controls. "Phase shift generators ready." "Good," Frank said. "Once we're in phase shift, the aliens won't be able to see or detect us." On the moon base, Lieutenant Commander Diane Foster monitored the nanoswarm progress. "Coverage at 95%, she reported to Admiral Morgan. "Every Coroxian ship is now infiltrated with our swarm." Patricia Morgan smiled. "Begin Phase 2 of Operation Trojan Horse." Across the solar system, hidden installations powered up. Weapons platforms that had been invisible to Coroxian scans prepared to fire. Billions of nanomachines, each smaller than a cell, positioned themselves inside alien ships. In orbit, Earth's tiny fleet continued normal operations. The Coroxians watched them with amusement, not knowing they were just a distraction. In his New York apartment, Dr. Gregory Patel finished packing a small bag. Like many scientists, he had been called to an underground shelter. As he prepared to leave, his neighbor knocked on his door. "Are we going to be okay?" the woman asked, her voice shaking. "Those alien ships are everywhere." Gregory smiled gently. "Don't worry about their big fleet. Size isn't everything." As the 48-hour deadline approached, the people of Earth waited in fear. Most believed their world was about to be conquered. Only a few thousand knew the truth. The Coroxians looked down at Earth's tiny fleet and saw weakness. They had no idea they were already surrounded by humanity's real power. While the Coroxians watched Earth's visible fleet with amusement, they couldn't see what was happening beneath the surface of the moon. 2 miles below the gray lunar dust, Lieutenant Commander Diane Foster stood in the center of Lunar Command. The large room glowed with blue light from dozens of screens. Hundreds of people worked at stations, their faces serious. "Nanoswarm deployment is at 98% and rising," Diane reported. "Full coverage in 3 hours." Admiral Patricia Morgan nodded. She had come from Earth through a secret transport system that the aliens couldn't detect. "Begin Phase 2 of Operation Trojan Horse," she ordered. On a huge screen, tiny dots of light showed where the nanoswarms were positioned. Each dot represented billions of microscopic machines that had been secretly placed on every Coroxian ship. "The aliens still haven't detected anything unusual," said Communications Officer Eric Miller. "Their scans show only our decoy fleet." Patricia smiled. "For 50 years, we've prepared for this moment. Ever since we detected their first signals, we knew they were coming." In another part of the base, Dr. Gregory Potel explained Earth's true technology to new crew members. "The ships you see in orbit are decoys," he said, pointing to images of Earth's small fleet. "We built them to look primitive on purpose." A young officer raised her hand. "But why pretend to be weak?" Gregory's eyes lit up. "Because history taught us something important. When species meet for the first time, the one that shows great power is always challenged. But the one that seems weak is often ignored." He clicked a button, and the wall display changed to show different ships, smaller vessels with strange, shimmering hulls. "These are our real ships," he continued. "They use quantum-entangled engines and phase dimension technology. The Coroxians can't see them because they only scan for normal matter and energy." Back in the main command center, Admiral Morgan received a message from Earth. "President Novak has delivered his final communication to the Coroxians," Eric reported. "He has declined their offer as planned." Patricia took a deep breath. "It's time. Activate all defense systems." Throughout the solar system, hidden bases came to life. Inside the rings of Saturn, beneath the clouds of Venus, and in the asteroid belt, weapons platforms powered up. These weren't simple laser cannons or missile launchers. They were devices that could manipulate the fabric of space itself. On the Coroxian flagship, General Vex Thor was shocked by Earth's response. "They refused to surrender?" he asked, not believing his translator. "With what defense?" "Their tiny fleet." Science Officer Jeltar felt increasingly uneasy. "General, I suggest we scan again with quantum-level sensors. Something doesn't feel right." "Nonsense," Vex Thor replied. "Begin the attack sequence. Target their largest cities first." But as the Coroxian weapons powered up, strange things started happening. Sensor officers reported unusual energy readings. Communication systems experienced interference. "What's happening?" demanded Vex Thor. On Earth, in the presidential bunker deep under the Rocky Mountains, President Novak watched the first phase of humanity's counterattack. "The quantum shield is active," reported Defense Secretary Carter. "All major population centers are now protected." The president nodded. "And the offensive systems?" "Operation Trojan Horse is fully deployed," Carter confirmed. "The nanoswarms are in position inside every Coroxian vessel." What the aliens didn't know was that for decades, humans had been developing technologies specifically designed to be invisible to conventional detection. While other species built bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humanity took a different approach. They created technologies that existed partly in other dimensions. They developed weapons that could change the laws of physics in small areas. And they built trillions of microscopic machines that could disassemble matter atom by atom. Earth's tiny fleet was never meant to fight. It was only meant to distract, while humanity's real power moved unseen into position. As the 48-hour deadline passed, the trap was ready to spring. The 48 hours had passed. The massive Coroxian fleet hung in space around Earth, weapons charged and ready. On the flagship, Emperor Kazavex himself had arrived to watch the conquest. "Send the final message," the Emperor ordered. "Let them know their time is up." General Vex Thor bowed. "Yes, Emperor, they will surely surrender now." The message went out to all of Earth. "Your time has ended. Submit or be destroyed." Minutes passed. The Coroxians waited for Earth's reply. Finally, a simple message came from President Novak. "Earth must respectfully decline your offer." Silence filled the Caraxian command center. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. "They refuse?" he asked. "With what power?" "Their tiny fleet." Science Officer Jeltar moved quickly to a sensor station. "Something is wrong. I detect unusual energy patterns throughout our fleet." "Nonsense," said Vexthor. "Begin the attack. Target there." He never finished his sentence. At that moment, one of the Caraxian ships simply disappeared. Not exploded, not broke apart. It just vanished completely. "What happened?" the Emperor demanded. "Where is Battle Cruiser 7? Before anyone could answer, another ship disappeared. Then another. "Report," shouted Vexthor. A sensor officer's voice shook with fear. "Unknown, General. They're just gone." On the main view screen, they watched as more ships vanished one by one. No explosions, no debris. They simply stopped existing. In Lunar Command, Admiral Patricia Morgan watched the same scene with calm satisfaction. "The nanoswarms are performing perfectly," reported Diane Foster, phase-shifting the Caraxian vessels at a rate of 1 every 12 seconds. "What exactly happens to the ships?" asked a young officer nearby. Admiral Morgan explained. "The nanoswarms create a quantum field that moves matter into another dimension. The ships still exist, but not in our spacetime. They can't return." On the Caraxian flagship, panic was spreading. Officers ran between stations. Alarms blared. The Emperor's face showed fear for the first time. "What is happening?" he roared. Science Officer Jeltar studied his readings with horror. "Something is inside our ships. Some kind of microscopic machines. They're changing the quantum signature of our matter." "Impossible," Vexthor shouted. "Fire all weapons at their planet." The Caraxians launched everything they had. Thousands of energy beams and projectiles raced toward Earth. But when they reached a certain point, they simply faded away, absorbed by an invisible shield. "Their weapons aren't even reaching our atmosphere," Defense Secretary Carter reported in the Earth bunker. "The quantum shield is holding perfectly." President Novak nodded. "Now show them our real fleet." In space around the Caraxian ships, the air seemed to shimmer and twist. Suddenly, hundreds of human vessels appeared where nothing had been before. Not the 5 primitive ships the aliens had mocked, but advanced craft of strange design. They had been there all along, hidden in phase shift, invisible to normal detection. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, one of the newly revealed ships, Captain Frank Byers opened a channel to the Caraxian flagship. "This is Captain Byers of Earth Defense. Your fleet has been neutralized. 1/3 of your vessels have been removed from this dimension. Surrender now, or we will continue." The Emperor stared at the screen in disbelief. Where had these ships come from? How had they remained hidden? And what kind of technology could make entire warships simply disappear? "Impossible," he whispered. "Their fleet was tiny." "No," said Jeltar quietly. "That was never their fleet. It was a trap. And we fell into it completely." The Emperor looked out at the stars, where his mighty armada was vanishing ship by ship. He had come to conquer a weak world with a tiny fleet. Instead, he had found humanity's terrible secret. Their apparent weakness was their greatest deception. Chaos spread through the remaining Caraxian ships. Captains shouted orders. Weapons fired wildly into space. Nothing they did seemed to work. Their weapons passed straight through the human vessels as if they weren't fully there. On the Caraxian flagship, Emperor Kazvex gripped the arms of his command chair. "How?" he demanded. "How is this possible?" Science Officer Jeltar worked frantically at his console. "Their ships exist partially in another dimension. Our weapons can't touch them because they're not fully in our reality." General Vexthor slammed his fist on a control panel. "Impossible. No species has such technology." "Clearly," Jeltar said quietly, "humans do." In Lunar Command, Admiral Patricia Morgan watched the Caraxian fleet's desperate attempts to fight back. "They're panicking," she observed. "Time to offer them a chance to survive." She nodded to Communications Officer Eric Miller. Open a channel to all Caraxian vessels. On every Caraxian ship, screens showed Admiral Morgan's face. She spoke clearly and calmly. This is Admiral Patricia Morgan of Earth Defense. Your fleet has been neutralized. We have removed 100 of your ships from this dimension already. Withdraw your remaining vessels immediately, and we will cease our attack. On the Caraxian flagship, the Emperor's rage grew. Never. Deploy the planet killer. Officers rushed to obey. The flagship split open along its middle, revealing a massive weapon unlike any other. It began to glow with terrible energy. The planet killer can destroy an entire world, General Vexthor said with satisfaction. Even their strange technology can't stop this. In the Earth bunker, President Novak watched the planet killer weapon charging. They're desperate, he said. Activate countermeasures. Defense Secretary Carter nodded, initiating Operation Achilles. The planet killer reached full power. A blinding beam of energy shot toward Earth, powerful enough to crack the planet's crust. But before it reached the atmosphere, something strange happened. The beam split into thousands of smaller streams of light. Each stream twisted in space, and then simply vanished. It was as if the energy had been guided away into nothingness. What happened? The Emperor screamed. Science Officer Jeltar stared at his readings in disbelief. They've created quantum tunnels in space. They'd redirected the energy into another dimension. On the UES Defiant, Captain Frank Byers addressed his crew. For centuries, humanity prepared for this moment. We knew that showing our real strength would only invite attack. So we hid it instead. Lieutenant Sam Wilson looked at the disappearing Caraxian ships on his screen. Why didn't we just build big, powerful ships like they did? Because, Frank explained, that would have started an arms race we might not win. Instead, we developed technology they couldn't even imagine. We learned to move between dimensions, to create machines too small to see, to bend the laws of physics themselves. Back on the Caraxian flagship, the Emperor faced a terrible choice. Already, more than half his fleet had vanished. The planet killer had failed completely. Nothing in Caraxian military history had prepared them for this type of defeat. We must retreat, Jeltar urged. We cannot fight what we cannot hit or even detect properly. Retreat. Vexthor snarled. The Caraxian Empire never retreats. At that moment, their flagship shuddered. Lights flickered. The hull made creaking sounds. The nanoswarm is beginning to affect our ship, a sensor officer reported, voice shaking with fear. We have minutes before we phase shift. Emperor Kazavex looked at the image of Earth on his screen. It seemed so small, so blue, so harmless. Yet it had defeated his mighty armada without losing a single ship. Send the signal, he finally said, his voice hollow. All ships, retreat. The remaining Caraxian vessels turned away from Earth. Their engines glowed as they fled toward deep space. In Lunar Command, Admiral Morgan watched them go. Should we pursue? Asked Diane Foster. Patricia shook her head. No. Let them go. Let them tell others what happens when you underestimate humanity. The mighty Caraxian invasion force, once 300 ships strong, now retreated with barely 40 vessels. They had come to conquer a world with a tiny fleet. They left understanding that appearances can be the deadliest deception of all. A small silver spacecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere, escorted by fighter jets from several nations. The world watched through live broadcasts as the alien vessel landed on a specially prepared area in neutral Switzerland. The landing site had been chosen carefully, a flat field surrounded by mountains, far from major cities, but accessible enough for world leaders to attend. A temporary structure had been built for the meetings, with security forces from 20 countries forming a perimeter. Ambassador Greg Bennett waited nervously with his team. As the former head of international negotiations for the United States, he had been selected to represent Earth. Dr. Wright and Jack Harrison stood nearby as advisors, ready to help with translation and technical matters. "Remember the plan," Dr. Martins whispered to them. "Show confidence. Don't give specific details. Act like we're just as powerful as they are." The spacecraft's door opened with a soft hiss. 3 tall figures emerged, walking slowly down a ramp. The aliens were nothing like humans had imagined. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms and bodies covered in what looked like shiny plates. Their heads had multiple eyes that moved independently of each other. The lead alien approached, wearing what appeared to be an ornate uniform. A small device on its chest glowed as it spoke, translating its clicks and hums into English. "I am Lazen Tekrix of the Nexus Imperium. I speak with the authority of Fleet Commander Zafrax." Ambassador Bennett stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth. I am Ambassador Bennett, representing the United Nations of our world." The meeting moved inside the facility, where both delegations sat across from each other at a long table. Earth representatives tried to hide their nervousness as they faced the aliens. "Let us speak plainly," Tekrix began. "Your planet was designated for resource extraction. This is standard procedure for the Imperium. Yet you claim to possess advanced defensive capabilities and powerful allies. We find this surprising." Bennett maintained a calm expression, just as he had practiced. "We were equally surprised to learn of your plans to attack our home. Earth has defended itself before. We prefer peace, but we are prepared for other outcomes." Tekrix's upper eyes narrowed. "We have scanned your planet extensively. We see primitive weapons, basic satellites. Nothing that matches your claims." "Of course not," Bennett replied smoothly. "Our defense systems remain dormant until needed. This is standard security protocol." The second alien leaned forward. "We demand to inspect these systems." "That would be impossible," Bennett said firmly. "Our security agreements prohibit showing our defenses to potential threats." "What security agreements?" the third alien asked. "With whom?" Bennett exchanged a glance with Jack, who gave a slight nod. This was the most delicate part of their bluff. "I am not authorized to discuss the details of our alliances," Bennett said. "Just as I'm sure you wouldn't reveal your own strategic partnerships." The aliens conferred among themselves in their own language. Jack wished he could understand what they were saying, but their translation devices were turned off during these exchanges. After 3 hours of tense questioning, the aliens requested to inspect some of Earth's non-military technology. Earth's team had prepared for this, taking them to see carefully selected facilities that showed humanity's best achievements while hiding their limitations. At the end of the day, Lazen Tekrix requested a private meeting with Bennett. They walked in the garden outside the facility, away from others. "Ambassador," Tekrix said, his voice quieter now, "I must tell you something important. The Imperium is not united on this matter." Bennett kept his face neutral despite his surprise. "I'm listening. Some of our leaders believe we should proceed with the original plan, regardless of your claimed defenses. Others, including myself, question whether conquering Earth is worth the potential cost." The alien looked up at the sky. "If your defenses and allies are real, an attack could start a wider conflict, one the Imperium might not win." Bennett felt a surge of hope, but maintained his serious expression. "Then I suggest you advise your leaders carefully." Tekrix turned all 4 eyes to stare at Bennett. "I will tell them what I have observed. But be warned, the final decision is not mine alone. And not all in the Imperium share my caution." As the alien delegation prepared to depart that evening, Jack and Dr. Wright monitored their communications. "They're still uncertain," Jack told President Simmons over a secure line. "The bluff is holding, but they're suspicious. They'll be watching us closely." "How much more time have we gained?" she asked. "Hard to say," Jack admitted, "but they're debating instead of attacking. That's something."